Tēnā koutou. Welcome to Wanganui District Council's webinar on simplifying local government. My name is David Gurney. I'm usually the Strategy and Policy Manager at Wanganui District Council, but tonight I have the pleasure of facilitating this conversation. First things first, I would like to hand over to Mayor Andrew Tripe, who will welcome us in with a karakia.
Thank you, David, and welcome everyone. So I'll just kick off with a karakia. E te atua, manaketia tēnei hui. Awe nātea mātou kia whakarongo, kia kōrero pono, kia whakaute, hoki I ngā whakaro katoa, arahina mātou kia te kina, o tātou hapore me te reo o rohe. Amene. So it's God bless this discussion, help us to listen, speak honestly and respect every viewpoint, guide us to protect our communities and local voice. Amen.
Kia ora, me, Andrew. So tonight we have a number of esteemed guests with me. We have, of course, Mayor Andrew, who has just done the karakia. We have local MP Carl Bates here. We have Doug Tate, who is the Chief Executive of Wanganui District Council. Councillor Julie Heroini is here. Councillor Glenda Brown has joined us. We have Councillor Philippa Baker-Hogan, Councillor Ross Fallon, and online I see we have Deputy Mayor Michael Law, and Charlotte, Councillor Charlotte Melser. So welcome everyone. And the Rural Community Board is represented by Jack Bullock, the chair of the Rural Community Board. So tonight is really a meeting of two halves. So first of all, we will be asking for some short introductions and some short overviews by firstly Mayor Andrew, then MP Carl Bates. We'll go to Chair Jack Bullock for a rural perspective, and then our CE Doug Tate will be talking about the community feedback that we've heard so far. But before we get to that, I will just go through the format. So we've got those introductions. The most important part of the evening, though, is answering questions that you can put to us. The way you can put questions is by clicking on the Q&A icon at the top of your screen and pretty much just typing in your question. Now, those questions will be moderated, so please keep them PG. You'll see them come up once we've checked they're okay, and then I'll be putting those questions to the people around this table. If we might not get through all the questions, but what we will do is if we don't get to your question, we will be answering all questions in a written format and posting those answers on our website. But hopefully we'll get through most of the questions you ask. This webinar is programmed to go through until 7 p.m. tonight. If we run out of questions, then we might finish a little bit earlier, but whatever comes first, we will run out of questions or we'll get through to 7 p.m. One other thing to note is this webinar is being recorded, and we will put a recording of this on the Wanganui District Council website too. So that's the plan for the evening. Mayor Andrew, I might get you to start with an overview of the Simplifying Local Government program and where Wanganui District Council is at.
Sure. Well, thank you, David. Well, first of all, welcome to all of those online. Thank you very much for participating in this really important discussion, which is what it is. It's a discussion. It's about hearing from you, not us just talking at you. So, but what really I want to press on a few points and really set the context of why we're here, which is, and as I said, an important community discussion on the government's Head Start proposal and the future shape of local government, what it looks like in the future. Now, Head Start is the name that's been given to this process. It's a process that was given to us a few months ago, and it was always intended primarily for the small number of councils around the country that are already well advanced in considering amalgamation and may have been discussing it for some time. And I think that's been a little bit confused because the sense was around a number of councils that we only had 3 months to make this decision. The day is that we're being given is the 9th of August, and many councils are now realising that they're not going to be ready for that. But for Wanganui, the conversation is taking place alongside a much wider program of local government reform. And for those that are informed about what's happening in local government, there's a lot going on. Not only we running the district and from the Wanganui urban area right out into our rural areas, doing the day-to-day work, but our council and councillors are busy considering a raft of reform. We've got the long-term plan process end of this year, but we're also thinking about local water done well and what that looks like. We're shaping that. Also changes to the Resource Management Act and the planning system, and the possibility of rates capping, and a bunch of other regulatory and legislative change coming at us. These reforms are actually, in my view, interconnected. It's like a flotilla of boats, if you like, a whole bunch of different changes but we need to look at them as one set of reform. And we need to also understand their combined impact before making decisions of this significance, rather than treating each of them in isolation. No decision around Head Start or the simplification for local government has been made by our council. However, my view and the current view of our council is that we are unlikely to be ready to participate in Head Start within the government's proposed timeframe of 9th of August, which is about 3 weeks' time. That doesn't mean that we're opposed to reform or unwilling to explore different models. It simply means that we need to be properly informed. And I'd also suggest, as I've done a few times, that if I was able to ask the question, does local government need reform, to any of you in the community or our council, the answer would likely be yes. So we think it's a good opportunity to take some time to think about all the reform in front of us, reimagine the role of local government, the relationship between local and central government, and how we deliver services for our community. And so it's about taking time rather than being rushed and not sufficiently informed, and not being sufficiently informed to make a decision is not a good place to be. So we're thinking about the long term. We're thinking about a collective raft of changes and reform in front of us. And before we support any proposal, we need confidence in any financial modelling, the delivery of regional council functions, what that looks like, given that the regional councils will be disappearing in 2028, but the functions don't. The proposed governance structures, how local voices would be heard across a larger entity, and that's particularly important for some of the smaller councils. We're hearing in particular from Ruapehu and Ringatike, our neighbours, the importance, but it's also important for our community that the local voice is heard and our identity is preserved as well. So we must understand how the identity, the uniqueness, if you like, of each district is protected, how urban and rural interests will be balanced, and how the views of iwi and hapu are considered. Any proposal must also meet the government's own tests, their own criteria, if you like. It must be deliverable, any amalgamation. It must support the new planning system that's in front of us. It must simplify governance and create genuine economies of scale, improve regional planning and, as I said before, service delivery, and most importantly, maintain strong and effective local representation. Tonight is therefore not about presenting a predetermined solution. And in fact, we have been quite staunch about saying we're not in solution mode yet, and it's very easy to go to the lines on a map and saying this is who we should go with. And there's a lot of councils and a lot of councillors around the country that have done that. And I've personally encouraged us not to go there until we actually understand and hear from the community, understand the financial modelling, the delivery of of other of regional council functions, the governance structures, everything else that needs to be considered. So for us, it's about listening, asking the right questions, understanding what problem we're trying to solve, and also, I think, considering whether there are better ways of organising local government while preserving the identity, relationships and local voice that matter deeply to our communities. The last big change in local government was actually 37 years ago in 1989. And this is, for me, an opportunity to look at how we deliver local government differently, an opportunity for us to think about what the needs are of our community going forward. And so let's take some time to do it rather than rush through it, is the feedback. So I'll leave it there, and hopefully there's a lot of questions there from you, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Andrew. Before I pass across to Carl Bates, I just want to remind you that you can ask your questions starting now. So in the top of your window, you will see a little icon Q&A. Please click on that and type in any questions that you would like us to put to the panel. It's always good to hear what your first name is and where you're from in Wanganui. And also, if you want us to direct that question to anyone in particular, please let us know. Carl, I'll hand over to you now. I guess from the government perspective, we would like to know, why is simplifying local government important and necessary?
Thanks very much, and kia ora koutou. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for arranging this evening to give this opportunity for another public forum for us to discuss this important opportunity for local government here in Wanganui and around the region. And thanks to Mayor Andrew for his introduction. I think it covered a broad range of the opportunities and challenges being faced as we walk through this process. Since becoming the Member of Parliament for Wanganui just over 2.5 years ago, this is a conversation that I've had with all 4 of the mayors that touch the electorate in one way or another. And I think it recognises that different parts of the country and different parts of our region are at different stages of this discussion for different reasons. But what's been clear over the course of the last 2.5 years, and I think prior to the last election as well, was that there is a recognition that New Zealand has too many levels of government, is over-governed in the regions, and that there are opportunities to simplify the local government system by reducing duplication, by improving accountability, and by making it easier for councils to deliver for their communities. And there are a number of things that the government has been doing centrally to support this, from the RMA reform to things such as changes in the way we consent buildings, whether they be residential or commercial, throughout the country. So last year, the government put forward the Simplifying Local Government Plan, which started the, if you like, formal conversation about how we approach that change. Through the consultation on that proposal, it became clear that there were regions and councils that were wanting to move quickly, that saw amalgamation, whether it be into unitary authorities or to amalgamate with councils to either side of where they are, were ready and wanted to move quickly, whereas other councils wanted to take time in working this through. So the government's response to that was the Head Start pathway, which is an opportunity for councils to pitch their own reorganisation ideas. And those are in a high-level proposal context. So not every piece of the detail about how that reorganisation could look or would look is required as part of that proposal. The criteria from the government is pretty simple in terms of what the steps are in order to present that proposal, including that 2 district councils or city councils in other parts of the country put forward a proposal together. And it's not for the regional councils to participate in that putting forward of those proposals themselves. So by the 9th of August, we hope to see these proposals come together and show clear support, strong leadership and real benefit for communities that are wanting to move quickly. And I acknowledge Mayor Andrews' comments already about Whanganui District Council's intention there. Ultimately, these proposals will be assessed against a set of criteria, including whether they're workable, they deliver clear benefits for the community, and maintain a strong local voice. So we're looking forward to seeing those come through on the 9th of August from councils around the country that are ready. And those that aren't, there is a process longer term to look at how simplification of local government will work for those regions.
Thank you, Carl. Okay, we'll move straight on to Jack. So, in this region, rural communities are incredibly important. So it's really important for us to keep the rural perspective front of mind. So, Jack, I'm wondering if you could say a few words.
Sure thing, thank you. Kia ora, everyone. So the rural community makes up actually 99% of our districts make up with over 6,500 people within that area. So it's quite an important area too, with the amount of people that are within that, but also the outputs and the opportunities that come from the rural community too. So I think that we've got an exciting opportunity, but we need to ensure that we have really strong representation from our rural community. I think that moving forward, when this simplification or amalgamation does happen, that we will see that rural community boards or community boards across different regions will be more important than ever. So it's really important for our rural community to be a part of the conversation. So please do engage in this process whenever you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Yes, we have heard an awful lot about local representation and voice, which is really important. It's an important theme that's come through in the feedback. So Chief Executive Doug Tate is here. Doug, would you mind just giving us a little bit of a summary of the feedback that we've heard so far from the community?
Yeah, great, thanks. What a feedback there. Right, hopefully you can all hear me now. Kia ora Whanganui. So look, I'm just going to speak briefly to some of the feedback that we've had to the survey responses. So that followed on from evening event that we did, which was hosted across the community. We had 150 participants at that first event, but there was a wider survey that were released across the Whanganui community. We were asking some really key questions around what your thoughts were around what's important in reform, what are the things that we should hold on to, and particularly looking to the future, what are those things as we move into any consideration of any options that you'd really want us to hone into or give particular consideration to. So across all of that feedback, look, unsurprisingly, and you've already heard it tonight, local voice was the thing that was really important. So not losing view of, again, the criticality of hearing communities, whether you're bigger or smaller across not just Whanganui, but also a lot of feedback about thinking about our smaller neighbours next to us as well. So in any consideration of the future, how would we think about their voice as well? Look, overall, 58% of you were against amalgamation. Again, it was 350 people, but it's a little bit, again, gives you a sense of where the conversation was going. But while there was a mood against amalgamation, there was also a really kind of clear feedback that there's still an expectation that we need to continue to do things efficiently. So that was, again, probably one of the big bits of feedback that came through around not wanting to try. Again, representation for efficiency. So overall, look, just really thank you for everybody that participated in it. Again, probably the key takeaway that we've really got is local voice is critical through it. There was some discussion about if we could make things cheaper, but I think, look, the really key piece of feedback that we got through the whole thing was about, if there are opportunities to be more efficient by working together with your partners, please do that, council, but not at the trade-offs or at the costs of local voice. So that's my takeaway, David, from the feedback. There's a swag of the stuff that's sitting on our website as well. So if you want to see more information on this and the feedback we did receive, we'll make sure we get that dropped into the chat, probably David as well, for people to reference as well. So
thank you, Doug. Okay, it's time for me to put the spotlight on a few people around this table and put some of the questions that you have asked us already. Just a reminder that please ask your questions in the Q&A icon at the top of the screen. But the first question is probably one of the bigger ones, really, that people have been talking about. And I'm going to ask Andrew to respond to this initially. It's about which other councils our Wanganui District Council talking to, and which likely merger options are starting to take shape?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's a natural question to ask as well. Look, if we just go directly to our neighbours to the west, we've got Stratford and South Taranaki. They've pretty much doing their own thing. They're looking to explore the Head Start program themselves. So this counts them, just to put that aside. Our immediate neighbours, we have obviously Ruapehu to our north and Rangitikei to our east, and they are other natural partners, if you like. We've certainly been actively speaking to them, and we are looking to speak to their elected members at some stage as well. They're also not in a position to go anywhere. They've talked to their community in their own way. Ruapehu are quite unique in their own way, because they could actually go north to into the Waikato area, or to Taupo, and also across to Rangitikei and beyond, and also to us as well. But for the mountain to sea catchment is a really important one here for us, with Te Awa Tupua being legislation that guides that. Also Te Waio Te Ika, which is the Whangahu River legislation. It's the catchments that are really the natural boundaries, and that's how we should, I think, be looking at how we think about our future, particularly with the Resource Management Act up for change. It's about looking at catchments. In regard to Palmerston North and Horowhenua, they tend to be looking south at the moment. That seems to be the feedback. Obviously, we're all talking to each other, and I've spoken to Mayor Grant Smith and Bernie Wandon from that area, and they're talking to each other, and they're also talking to Kapiti as well, who are also talking into Wellington. And then we go out to Tararua, who are another council in our area, who are on the other side towards Hawke's Bay, and they're in a unique situation because they've got various options. We can also then we've got Manawatu, who are stuck in the middle, will have been very staunch about saying they don't want to amalgamate. So yes, we've been talking, but there's no play here in regard to who we're going to go with. As I said at my introduction, there's a lot of modelling and understanding and unpacking what information, or gathering information that we need, both hard data but also soft data in regard to conversations that we need before we make any decisions. But I guess our natural partners, if you're to cut to the chase, are Ruapehu to the north and Rangitikei, and potentially others that are beyond that. We've got Manawatu and also Tararua. But as we get further away, the geography does matter, I think. But still early days, really. It's a long-winded answer. Hopefully, makes sense.
Fantastic. We know that moving forward, there'll be a lot of options that we need to think about. We have a question from C, just a letter. Doug, I'm going to ask you about this question. It's around when are we going to start modelling different scenarios that might be available to us about those options, and would we make that kind of information publicly available?
Hopefully you can turn my audio off again. Keeps on turn back on. Sorry, Tim. So probably the second part. I'll start with the second part, David, because that's the easy bit to answer, which is, by default, for the most part, all of this stuff will be openly and will be the conversations that we'll be having with community. So again, that's the basis to inform good decision making. So transparency is really front and foremost in this. So that's probably the easy part. In terms of the modelling, look, it's really going to come down to there is already some existing modelling that's been done that is public. So there is a piece of work that was done, agreed to by the Mayoral Forum. So that's a piece of Morrison Low data, which baselines what is a potential unitary council for across the Manawatu Wanganui region. So that's available on the Horizons Council website. And again, we'll make sure we've got the links, I'm pretty sure, on our Head Start page as well. So we'll, again, head to the website. It's an existing piece of modelling that's already there. Probably the challenge with that is it doesn't tell the full story. And there's also some modelling work that's been done by Horizons Regional Council about what the level of revenue and rough expenditure is by council. So there is some modelling that's been done, but really probably in terms of the detailed modelling on each of the options, that would really come down to what the configurations would look like, how we would treat things like regional council functions into the future. So yeah, probably can't really answer, David, that first part of the question, but when we understand really what the form would be, that would be really when you'd spend effort, and probably the biggest thing, you'd spend money actually, because modelling doesn't come cheap. So done well anyway. So you'd wait until you've got that sorted first.
Thanks very much, Doug. The next question I'm going to put to Carl. So this question is from Enzo, and Enzo notes that New Zealand's one of the most centralised countries in the OECD, and he asks, why do we think there is too many layers of government?
Thanks, Enzo, and a great question. Although I think there are two different concepts that you're referring to. So centralisation, clearly I come from a political perspective that doesn't like things being centralised in Wellington, and there's a number of examples we could speak to where we have returned decision-making to the regions, which is different to the number of layers of government, which is where the role of regional councils and local councils come into play. There are a number of places in New Zealand that have what are called unitary authorities, where there isn't a regional council layer, and they work effectively. If I just think about this morning where we were at a event opening some new houses for residents here in Wanganui, and they were talking about the development of another set of houses that are going to be opened, or built rather, and they've been held up because they've gone through the consenting process at Wanganui District Council. They're now going through the consenting process at the Regional Council and been asked to do things that are exactly the same as what they've already had to do for the Wanganui District Council process. And so that's just one example of where having another layer, having another process, having a different bureaucracy you have to work through slows things down when, anyone in Wanganui would agree, I think, that we need more homes built here that are affordable and warm and dry, etc., for families to move into. So that's just one example of where layers of government create challenge.
Thank you, Carl. I'm now going to turn to Councillor Julie. Julie, we have a question here. Are you So the question is, could things like libraries, parks, pools, community facilities, the things that people use every day, could they change if there is a merger?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, I'm using that.
Kia ora, the audio's come on too, so hopefully that's okay. Thank you for the question, David. Pātai pai tērā. We all know how important our community facilities are. Having the opportunity for our young families to go and visit the library, to take the kids to swim at the swimming pool, are fundamental parts of living in communities, whether they're small or large. Some of those communities have many facilities and others have not so many, but at the end of the day, they are incredibly important. And the perspective that I've heard so far is that these services should still remain being delivered locally. However, it does make sense that where there are economies of scale, that we do look to do things across numerous parties so that we can benefit from potential cost savings. And I look, for example, Whanganui District Council in the past has had to reduce the amount of book vote that we use for our libraries. Potentially, if we had an economy of scale and we were servicing a number of libraries, we could have more of a book vote and we could share that resource amongst all of those libraries while still maintaining the service level that we have in our community. So I think absolutely, those types of facilities should remain within our community, but where it makes sense, we should be looking for opportunities to do things together and to try and do things as efficiently and save as much cost as we can, because at the end of the day, everybody's rates bills are increasing, and we do want to do things better. So hopefully that answers your question, David.
Thank you very much, Councillor Julie. I'm going to put a very similar question to Councillor Philippa and Councillor Glenda, actually. I'll start with Councillor Philippa. What services do you think must stay under local control?
Yeah, thank you, David. I mean, yeah, exactly. Community facilities, our libraries, our museum, our pools, our parks, and our open spaces. We know, local people and local people in our council teams and our parks teams know those best. I think things like our footpaths, footpaths and mules, our local roads, and then if you get to things, in the economic development space, that will be interesting because there could be some bigger projects, but how we spend, how we help, with local events, etc. There's another wee thing I'd like to just go on to if I could, but before with 20 years of experience in local government. I mean, I've been part of a Whanganui District Health Board actually for 20 years, and so I've got experience in a change from 20 district health boards into one to Whataora. And while I think we're all up for change and we're up for efficiencies. One of the things, what governors are, they're only really, we're there between the community and the government. And I guess things like the hospital, and what I was really proud of is services like paediatrics and our children and birthing our babies and looking after them. Well, I can see that, hey, Palmerston North's just down the road, Mid Central District Health Board, less than an hour. It's really all the things that fall in under there, like if families are, it's the travel, it's having good cars, it's having, it's all those things that can affect stuff. So I really, that's where local decision making can be so important, and that local voice.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that we have picked up in our community feedback, that a bottom line for Whanganui is that we retain that strong local voice no matter what outcome comes from simplifying local government. Councillor Glenda, I'll pitch the same question to you. What services do you think should continue to be delivered locally no matter what?
Look, I mean,
You're on mute.
I'm off mute now. I said all of them, but really, if we're able to get some cost efficiencies by executing the back end of these services administration, for instance, then I would be happy to see that, as long as face-to-face execution is local. That's what we've heard. That's been the main theme throughout most of these answers so far tonight, is we want to keep local. And I think that's really important that we're able to do that. I think Julie and Philippa have answered that question really well about the services and how important it is that our local region is able to know that the nuances between regions is really considered, and by doing that, it needs, they need to stay local. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glenda. Okay, the next question I will put to Doug. So KB asks, if the government who is driving the reform is providing financial assistance to councils, sorry, I'll rephrase it. It was a bit garbled. KB asks if government who is driving the reform, if they are providing any financial assistance to councils in terms of responding to the simplifying local government.
Great, thanks, David. So look, I think the important thing is remembering at this stage it's announcements, and that's not saying we don't take announcements of government seriously as well in the mix of these things. So in this front end, look, we've been very cautious about what we have spent. It's been very, very minimal to date. But being also really clear that in the guidance information that's come through from the officials involved in this is that this is a cost for local government to wear. Certainly there's no indication that there's funding to come with it. So that's probably the answer as cleanly as we're aware of it, based on the announcement and based on the guidance information that's come from officials. So.
Okay, Doug, I'm going to go back to you for this. This next question's a bit of a tricky one from Jessica. Jessica asks about, and hopefully I do justice to your question, Jessica, because there's a few layers to this. When thinking about roading, for example, when we are building efficiencies into contracts, and that might mean contracts across a larger organisation or a wider region, how do we ensure that smaller places like Wanganui will be heard when negotiating those contracts?
Yeah. Thanks, David. So look, there's obviously scale to be achieved from working together at a regional scale. And if you think about things like logistics around, we know across a region we buy X amount of pipe. So how would you make some efficiencies around potentially pipe? Just use that as an example. That might be a good or bad example. But look, certainly Auckland Council, I think there's some really good examples that you can take from there. And I was sitting next to Phil Wilson, who's the CEO of Auckland Council, a couple of weeks ago, and the approach that they've taken is exactly that. They started at these very big macro contracts once upon a time. They did see some values come down, but it's the balance between cost and value as well. So they've actually started disaggregating some of those really big contracts back into more smaller localized contracts related to catchments, where local contractors know the area better, have connections with the community, and while the cost might be relative or about the same or even a little bit higher, the value that they're getting for that is much higher. So look, I think there's some good opportunities around making sure that whatever scale and whatever procurement approach we take, it's very deliberate and communities are able to have their say about, again, what's important to them in terms of how they work through and how they procure services. So look, a couple of examples there, David, but lots of things to work through in whatever future form and function we take.
Fantastic. Okay, the next question's from Enzo. Enzo actually asks about central government paying for reform as well, so that's a similar theme to before. But Enzo's also asking about rates capping. And the question is, how are we going to manage with less money in the system and more work to do if rates capping comes into being? So I'm going to put this question to two people. I'm going to ask MP Carl to give a first answer, and then Marianne, you might have some perspectives on this as well. But let's start with Carl.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the question. So the question asks how we're going to manage with less money in the system, with more work to be done as a result of rates capping. And I think if we take a step back, we've heard a very clear message from New Zealanders across the country that rates are going up at an unsustainable level, both in terms of local government or local council and regional councils. And so the government for that has been that we're setting a clear expectation that there will be a cap to rates, and there will be the ability for councils where there is a clear case for rates on a particular year to be higher to address a particular issue that community has, for there to be the ability to do that. So that where there is real need, councils can collect the rates that they need to do that. But what rates capping will do is force decision making around where councils are choosing to put money, where services should be reviewed, whether it be to make them more efficient, whether it be whether or not local ratepayers are really willing to pay the cost of the decision's been made, it's really easy to go out to a community and say, would you like X or would you like Y? But often we don't do that in the same hand as saying, and this is what cost of that is going to be. And so, as I say, we're hearing across New Zealand that rates have been increasing at a level that's not sustainable for ratepayers. The second part of that question, though, around what are we doing to remove cost from the system, is really a core part of the answer, and that's by removing duplication in the local government system. So this whole process we're going through Head Start, it's about looking at where there are efficiencies that can be driven through government regulation, like building consents. So there's not just one answer to it, because it's these different streams of work that will all come together ultimately to give us a simplified, more effective, more cost-effective and sustainable local government system.
Thank you, Carl. Andrew, do you have a perspective on that question?
Yeah, so at the start in my introduction, I talked about a flotilla of Sorry, I'm on mute. All right. Yeah, so at the start in my introduction, I talked about a flotilla of change, and of which Head Start is one, and we've got RMA another, and I also talked about rates capping at the time as well. And so the sense I have is that we need to look at the bigger picture and look at all of these together rather than in isolation. And so rates capping is certainly something that we need to consider. And obviously, front of mind for our council is always affordability for our community, at the same time as trying to deliver services that give us the best life we can. And to achieve that, a couple of years ago, we embarked on a 6-point plan, which was really deliberate, and it was to look to find efficiencies and cost savings, revenue opportunities, just ways of doing things differently and cutting costs to get rates as low as possible. And as well known, we achieved the lowest average rates rise in the country this last financial year. This next year we're sitting at 6.9%, which is actually right on, or just a tiny bit under the average across New Zealand. So councils are struggling to keep rates down because their costs are going up, and most of our costs are actually plastic and bitumen and plastic for pipes and bitumen and roading and concrete, which have gone up massively in the last little while, and so we're having to contain that, but also try and pass on those costs to the community through rates, and it's not easy. So on rates capping, I understand the government's desire to place greater discipline on council spending and also to protect households from unaffordable increases. And I hear people, and I'm out in the community a lot talking to people, and I hear how challenging it is, not just rates, but electricity, petrol, food, the whole lot. It's difficult. But that objective, I think, is entirely reasonable to look at how we can reduce cost, and rates capping is one mechanism to do that. However, a blunt cap could actually create, I'd use the word unintended consequences a lot, if it does not recognise the very different circumstances that councils actually face, which is infrastructure pressures, which we're seeing, and we've got growth, and Whanganui is growing, historic underinvestment, and even natural disasters, which are increasing, and we need to factor that in, and the cost of also meeting government-imposed standards where required as well, and it's not unreasonable either. And also, a cap may limit the amount councils can collect, but it doesn't actually reduce the underlying cost of delivering essential services that we all need to live. Without wider funding reform, it could also simply lead to deferred maintenance, which is an easy thing to do. And I've even just yesterday in a council workshop said we cannot defer maintenance because it just passes it on to a future governance structure. Also reduce services or greater pressure on debt. So it's hard. My view is that affordability and financial discipline must remain absolutely core to what we do, but any rates capping regime should be flexible, transparent, and supported by broader discussion about how local government is funded, but also what the community want as well. So we might need to find that balance between the services that we absolutely need to have and the services that we may need to part with, and that's not an easy decision. So probably a whole lot more I can say, but that's
Can I just add to that? So, David. Thanks, Mayor Andrew, and I agree with that last statement wholeheartedly. I think it's really easy for councils and or councils across the country to look to the funding system and say it's about funding, but ultimately the ratepayer, the taxpayer, it all comes out of one pocket, and that is yours who are listening this evening and everyone who lives in our community. And, you know, we've seen even examples in the last couple of days where councils who are not even able to put forward a proposal as part of this process have decided to spend ratepayer money in exploring these options. Now, that's not here in Wanganui, to make that point clear. But the point I make is there are tough conversations that councils across the country need to have, and as the Mayor says, focus on that core business of ensuring that the infrastructure and the maintenance and the things that keep our cities and communities working is happening. And then once that's happened, determine the level of communities are willing to put into additional projects and additional activities. And I have to acknowledge Mayor Andrew for over the last and a bit years, or just 3 and a bit years, that that Mayor Andrew's been the mayor, there haven't been new projects announced in Wanganui. There haven't been new ribbons that he's gone to try and cut, so that there's a project there for the council to announce. It's been about making sure that that underlying financial discipline and maintenance of infrastructure is happening.
Thank you, Cal. We have a couple of questions here which relate to Wanganui bearing the cost of our neighbours going forward. So I will probably put this initially to Doug, but Miranda, you might have some views on this too. Jessica has also asked a question about this. Jessica's question is around the levels of asset investment that our neighbouring councils may have made. There are some councils and communities which have not put as much effort, I guess, into maintenance and investment. And there's a fear that moving forward, if we merge councils, Wanganui residents might be actually subsidising those costs in neighbouring councils. So I'm just wondering if you might want to respond to that, whether that's an outcome that might actually happen in the future.
Yeah, like just probably my reflection is if you can look at local water done well to start with, and the process we're going through in the Ruapehu Wanganui model currently, all of those costs are still ring-fenced to those localities as well. So we're working together, we're getting efficiencies or modelled efficiencies. So they are still ring-fenced. I think in any future amalgamation or reform of local government or how councils work together into the future, they'll all be the things that we will all want to carefully consider. Again, everybody comes to the table with different backgrounds and different issues, and local government's really no different to that. It will be about how in any future structure would work together on that and have a really informed and robust conversation on that. So in short, the answer is depends on what we agree to in the future, what the information is, and again, how we would work through all of those things in any form of amalgamation or reform, how they might be grandfathered for a period of time, and what if some regions and districts want to pay even more than other districts. So lots of things still, David, to work through.
Thanks, Doug. Mayor Andrew or even Carl, do you have a perspective on that issue?
Look, I can add a little bit. I think Doug's given a really good summary there, but I think what people are scared of, if we're to cut to what this is about, is subsidising other councils that may have underinvested in asset management and infrastructure and in a raft of other necessities that we need going forward. And Wanganui, I think, been really diligent and particularly in infrastructure management and water and so on. So if you go around the country, we're in pretty good state. People complain sometimes about the roads and that kind of thing, but we're actually pretty good. And I think, testament to previous councils that have been really good stewards of our district. In regard to a possible merger with other councils that are underinvested, this is going back to, we need to understand and the information and model the data that we get from them, and also understand where they're at, their current status of asset investment and renewals and maintenance and their infrastructure status and so on, before we make any decisions. And also there are other mechanisms that you can use that ring fence different regions or different councils or different areas for the services that they might want, that if they want them, they've got to pay for them. And we can put a little fence around that area, and they pay for that particular component, whatever that might be. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Okay, Doug. Jaya has picked up on a comment that you made about modelling options and has noted that modelling is quite often very expensive. Jaya's interested in whether we've ever investigated looking at AI and utilising that to make it much more efficient and cost effective, especially with the cost of getting experts to do this. So she's asking whether we could use AI to do this and then have some independent experts validate the outputs. I'm just wondering, I'm sure, I know the council's looking at utilising AI wherever possible, including yourself.
ChatGPT is wonderful, but it doesn't fix everything, unfortunately. So look, we already use aspects of Copilot inside our organisation, and those professional people we use with, again, they'll have their own smart AI, whatever they're called, bots. I'll come up with a better word, that will, again, do that interrogation for us. Probably the big bit, like, there's some efficiencies in it, but what the real work is at the moment, again, if you jump into that, like just using the regional council example I gave earlier of some of the early work they've done, a lot of that is about having to work through the intricacies of council general ledgers and actually work out what the allocations are. And AI is incredibly powerful tool, but you've still got to work through some of that simpler allocation. So look, wherever we try and make things as simple and as practical as we can, we certainly try our best in that respect. So yes, it can do some things, but it can't do all of it. So
thank you, Doug. Okay, this is a bit of a slightly controversially put question about why even bother with a merged council area? Why not just make a national government body that can basically run the functions of council? So, Mayor Andrew, I think I'll give you that stinger of a question first, and then there might be some other views around the table. Jack, I might put it to you as well.
So a nationally run organisation.
Yeah, so why can't a national body do what councils do?
Well, I think a single government based in Wellington that delivers for all of New Zealand, and I think that sounds good ideologically and for some, but the reality is that the best that people want their voices heard right across the country, and local government plays that role. Personally, I think local government could do a whole lot more, and we're going to see waters move out of council into separate CCOs, and so what does that leave councils to do? And when I've got roading pretty much covered and other parts of infrastructure, so I actually see an increased role of local government to deliver for the community, because yesterday a few of us were out at Gonville Library, we're out at Hakiki Street yesterday. We get out and about to hear from our community, and if we have a single body that runs Wanganui from Wellington, I think it'll be a mitigated disaster, unmitigated disaster, I should say. Yeah. So, but look, the voice, localism is a word that's used often in local government, and even for us to get out to Mangamahu and Fordell and other parts of our rural community is really challenging. Just even in Wanganui, getting out to the suburbs is really hard, given how much we've got on our plates here. We try to get out there and talk to people, and you would certainly lose that local voice and even identity if we took that away. And we didn't have local government. So councils have got a massive role to play. But I think if I look at other models overseas, I think we can do a whole lot more. In the UK, councils run the police, hospitals, schools, and many other functions that central government do. So I think this is the relationship I'm talking about between local and central government that we need to be brave about and look into New Zealand's future and understand how we govern our country, full stop. And so, there's probably a whole lot more to say, but let's see. I'm sure Carl's got a view on that as well.
Yes, thank you, Mary Andrew. Jack, from the rural perspective, I'm guessing you've got a few views on this question as well.
I do. Initially, I think that's quite a scary thought, actually, is to lose our local voice, our local representation, and have an organisation run Wanganui, make decisions on behalf of our residents from Wellington. If that were to happen, those people don't know our local areas, they don't know the makeup of our communities. It would also take away our uniqueness as well. And I think that's really important. And that's a part of our identity, is that we as elected members are accessible. You walk down the main street, we can have a quick chat to Carl, bump into Andrew as well. I walk down through Moana Drive out in the village there and get stopped by people and get engaged with about different aspects of what we may be doing, or issues that they may have that they want to be rectified, or ideas or opportunities that they have too. So the idea of taking that away from us and from our local communities, I would not be supporting that, and I do not think that Wanganui people will be supporting that either. I think that we need to keep our local voice and our local identity and representation local.
Thank you, Jack. Carl, I'm going to pivot this question a little bit, because I know that the government is looking at standardising a whole load of things, like planning through the resource management changes, the consenting rules, they're being standardised nationwide. The question I'm asking is, and I know that as part of the simplifying local government criteria as well, local voice is actually important. I'm just wondering whether the standardisation might actually help local voice in a way.
Look, I think you're absolutely right, David, that removing and simplifying and creating more efficient processes around things that across should be standardised will enable councils to focus on the areas of local activity, local voice that they should be engaged with. To take, for example, the planning system, which you referred to. If we compare ourselves to Japan as an example, and I know we have a sister city relationship in Japan, Mayor Andrew and a number of the councillors and wider community joined a delegation over there recently. Japan has 13 planning zones that they determine planning, building activity around. Across New Zealand, we currently have 1,075 unique planning zones. So one of the things we're trying to resolve with the changes to the RMA is a narrowing of the number of planning zones to make things more efficient here in New Zealand. Now, we're not going to get to 13, but I think we're going to get significantly less than we currently are. And that will enable that focus on local voice. There has been a number of both questions and answers related to this concern around local voice. And I just wanted to put on the table from my perspective that I don't think, and I certainly haven't heard anything from a government perspective, which is around an intention that this process will remove local voice. The question becomes, what does local voice mean in terms of this region or this rohe? So if you take, for example, the references to Taranaki earlier in the webinar, they've determined that, or they're thinking from what's been said in the media, that South Taranaki and Stratford see their local voices being those two communities, not combining with New Plymouth because they see that as a distinct community that would have a different voice. I think that's what the local voice conversation means for me, and the more we can do to support councils to be effective, to have a sustainable size, but at the same time still be able to reflect the culture and the nature of that local voice, I think the better for all of us.
Thanks very much, Carl. We're running, we're kind of getting to the end of the question. So just a reminder, if you want to ask a question, please do put it into the Q&A box at the top of your screen. Carl, I'm going to ask you another question. It's around, as part of this process, if you don't put in a Head Start proposal, you move into the backstop process, where the government has quite a major role in determining what the structure of local government will be. The question is, what happens if government chooses an outcome in the backstop process that the community doesn't support?
Thanks, David. So the backstop process and how that will unfold hasn't been detailed as of yet. So I think that is a question that will come up as we look to what that backstop process is, which will be after this year's election. I don't think that we will see that rolled out in terms of detail between now and then. At the moment, the Head Start process is specifically for councils and regions where there is an idea that they want to move forward and they want to take that step and start that process. And I should note that there's also no requirement that every council that puts forward a proposal involves every council that proposal's about. So, for example, there is an approach where Wanganui could put forward a proposal along with one of the other district councils that it neighbours, for example, Rangitikei, and that proposal might suggest that 2 or 3 different councils come together. The process doesn't require all of those councils to have agreed to that in advance. So there is recognition that there may be across the country some councils that go through this process where not everyone around that table is of the view that they want to go through the process. But nothing will happen through Head Start without 2 local councils, district councils, coming together and saying, we've got a proposal that we want to put forward. What will then happen for those that don't choose to do that in terms of the backstop process, we'll see those details come out later.
Thank you, Carl. Just a few final questions that are coming through. Jessica's asking, is this really a consultative process or is it all predetermined? I might pass over to one of the councillors actually, because you've seen the feedback that we've presented to council meetings. So who should I pick on? Councillor Julie, would you like to have a go at answering that question?
Yeah, kia ora, David. That's a good question, and I think absolutely this is a consultative process. We, like everyone else, are still finding what the process is along the way. We've made the effort to get out into the community as much as we can. We've had the meeting that we had at Memorial Hall. We've held hui here at Council. We've had hui at Gonville, at Hakeke, and we've had the webinar tonight. And the reason that we're doing that is not because we know where we're going and we've already decided where we're going. It's because we value the voices of our community and we want to ensure that any arrangement that we enter into, we've done our very best to ensure we understand what values are important to our community, so that when we do engage in a negotiation about whether or not we amalgamate or join with our neighbours, that we can put those thoughts and feelings and values front and centre to ensure that we do the very best that we can to maintain the voice of our community as we move forward. That's not to say that we've decided that we're not going to amalgamate, because amalgamation is definitely on the radar. There are efficiencies to be had. There are ways we can work better as a community and as a region. There is opportunity. within catchment models, within the Aotearoa legislation, within working with our neighbours. But there are also hurdles that we need to work through. And like you've heard tonight, we need to do the modelling. We need to understand actually what does that look like for us. We don't have any actual options on the table to consider at the moment. On the 4th of August, when we have our council meeting, we will not be voting on whether or not we go with X, Y, or Z, is my understanding. We will be talking about whether we look to pursue a Head Start opportunity or whether we take our time and consider what's going on in the wider community and then move forward in whatever respect that looks like. So absolutely, it's not a predetermined outcome. There are some natural relationships that already exist, but again, that does not mean that we're going to just go with those. We are doing the work to ensure we make the best decisions that we can, and including the values from our community as we do so. And I'm sure Councillor Glenda's got some further thoughts on that.
I did have some, but you've wrapped that up really well, Councillor Julia. Look, we have not made any decisions, and that has been some of the questions that have been fired back at us and some of the corridors that we've been having. We have not made any decisions around the council table formally. And as Councillor Julie said, that we've already have got some existing relationships. And, you know, it could be that some of the councillors have some leanings where they are thinking that they might like to go, but we have not collaboratively made any decisions at this stage.
And given we're moving around the councillors around the table, Councillor Philippa, do you have a view on community consultation and how you're taking account of that in your decision making?
Yeah, I think the difference in this one is it's a little bit like at least with I'll call it 3 warders and then local warders done well, the kind of flip between governments. At least we kind of knew a bit what it was. We knew what it was going to look like, but we had some options. Certainly, if local warders done well, but we don't. Early days, it felt like if we don't go into the Head Start, this is me thing. This is how I felt. If we don't go into the Head Start, the backstop's going to be quite bad, and we're going to have this done to us, and that's a scary. You know, done to us is scary for anyone in any context. But I think as we are working through it now, we're not. We kind of that our understanding is changing that this is actually voluntary. So we're trusting the government on this. This is voluntary. And if we do decide not to enter this process, and we definitely are not going to be ready to make a decision on any councils we may possibly amalgamate with by, you know, 9th of August, whatever that date is, then we shouldn't be scared about what it will that it's going to be done to us. And I guess we're going to hold any government a new one up to that as well. So that's probably giving us that, you know, so then it's like doing the work. And the question there a bit is, you know, is all the work that we've got to do already as a council and our team, and where do we prioritise that work with, you know, actually no resource, no actually funding for that. That's probably all I'll say at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Philippa. Councillor Ross, you often have great things to say about the community, but I know you're struggling a little bit with your voice tonight. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity for any reflections you have.
I'm on. Yeah, one of the things that came out from our survey was the essentialness of maintaining a local voice. And we've reached out to community in several different ways to hear what they are saying. My challenge to our community is to get out of your chairs, get out of your home, and after work, whether you're Grey Power or the Ratepayers Association or Rotary or the local football club, is invite our officers or our mayor, etc., to come and talk to you, or take this recording that will be on the website and play it at a meeting that these organisations have, because this is the most up-to-date information we have and responses that we're giving. And so as of tonight, this is where we are at. And I would like to invite our residents to take that opportunity, to not wait for us to come up with another method of reaching out, but they've got these opportunities to take this recording or invite our local MP or our mayor or our councillors to speak to a gathering. And it doesn't matter if the gathering is small or it's large, but be proactive as residents and seek this opportunity, because come August the 4th, we will be doing what we can do, and August the 9th is the deadline. And we've already indicated that we are probably unlikely to meet the deadline. That's an interesting conundrum as well, because depending on how we frame our response to government, we will then be waiting for a response from government to that. And so it's got a long way to play out. And I think Carl indicated that post the election, that details about the backstop would become more clear. So I'm not overly freaking out about August the 9th. I believe there's still a window to look at, but I don't know what the response will be coming back from government. And I think that's very important. There is time to play this out. Again, I encourage community to be proactive and not wait for us to reach out, because we've actually reached out in so many ways. I'm not sure what else we can do. We could call another town hall meeting. We could do another webinar, but sometimes I'll close on this. Sometimes I hear people say, your meetings, I'm still at work. So then we hold a meeting later in the evening and they say, but I've got kids to put to bed or whatever. These are issues that are so significant that at some point, if you know a town hall meeting is coming up or a chance to be in a webinar or whatever, plan your evening, get a babysitter in, get a friend in, get involved. And even if you don't have a question to ask, you can hear what's going on. I think this recording is very, very important because it sits there. It's an opportunity for anyone to grab it and share it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Right, we're just sorting out these. Great. Thank you very much, Ross. And I think it's a really important note that, you know, our councillors are very, very accessible. I know Mayor Andrew is very accessible. I know MP Carl also is always available to talk about these things. So if you do have any more questions and you'd like to talk them through with someone, please reach out to our council. Please reach out to MP Carl. You'll find a lot of this information is on our website. We have a page there about simplifying local government and Head Start. You will find the recording of this webinar on that website, as well as a recording of the public forum that we held a few weeks ago. So that is there too. You will also find in the next couple of days answers to all the questions that have been asked. We will be putting some written responses to those questions up as well. So please look out for those. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who here today. It's always quite tough to answer questions and provide answers on the fly. So I really appreciated that. I really want to say the biggest thanks to you, the audience out there, for tuning in and asking questions and listening to what is a very, very important conversation for Wanganui. I will ask Carl and then Mayor Andrew to just make a few comments to wrap up tonight. So, Carl.
Thanks very much, David, and echo your comments regarding thanks to everyone for being here and for being online and listening. This is clearly a process being led by the council and by the community in terms of what we want or you want to see for this region, for this rohe. My encouragement would be to consider that if ultimately Wanganui District Council sees an amalgamation on the cards, to put its foot forward for the 9th of August. It is clear that there's no expectation that all the details need to be finalised. And so this is a conversation that will be continuing clearly prior to and post the election. The minister has already laid out that there are go through to put in place legislation to enact any amalgamations for councils around New Zealand that choose to go down that path through this Head Start process, and all of that will happen post the election. But what I'm taking away from this evening is very clearly the importance for Wanganui voices to be heard. And I suppose at the back of my mind, a question that I'm grappling with is, do we get that local voice if we continue to have involvement with a regional council based out of Palmerston North, or does taking a step forward through this Head Start process give us the opportunity to have more of a local voice on the issues that matter, that Councillor Julie and Councillor Glenda spoke to, and at the same time gain those efficiencies through some of the things the government is doing to support things like building consents and the like. But thank you, as I say, for organising this evening and for everyone online participating in this process.
Thank you, Carl. And Mayor Andrew, I will ask you for the final words, a wrap up, and then maybe a closing karakia as well.
All right. Well, I guess first of all, thank you to everyone, all of you who've taken part in tonight's discussion, and also for the great questions that sometimes we may not have thought of, but it's good to have those answered, and hopefully we can find a way to share those. But what I think is clear is that there's broad recognition that local government needs to change, and I said that when I started. But the real question is not whether reform is needed, but what form that reform should take, and we're going to take some time to look at that. What problem we're trying to solve, how we make sure that any new arrangements are better for our communities, and in particular, what is best for Whanganui. And that's a key part of this. It's not what's best for local government. We are here for Whanganui, here to serve Whanganui and do the best for Whanganui. So, but this is arguably the biggest opportunity in local government since, as I said, 1989. So let's use this opportunity well. And Head Start really, I think, gives us an opportunity to consider whether there are more efficient and effective ways of delivering local government, how structural change alone will not guarantee lower costs. We need to look at that, obviously, but better services or stronger regional outcomes. And any proposal in the future must be supported by robust financial analysis, a clear implementation plan, a transition plan. Any change requires a transition to deliver on that change, and that's not easy. And also genuine evidence that it will improve outcomes on whatever measure that you have on outcomes. Like all elected members, we come into our roles. We came into our roles to serve our community, but also to take Whanganui forward. And I personally had ambitions of hearing from our community around projects, including my own ideas. However, that reality quickly became real, and that is that I've not actually announced any new shiny projects in my time as mayor, and that goes to other elected members for their aspirations as well. And my sense is let's finish the projects we currently have on our radar, such as the Wakefield Bridge, the Port, Whanganui East Pool, and including those recently completed, such as the Sargent Gallery, and also looking into the future of what's in front of us, like the Dublin Street Bridge, which is going to be a massive exercise to replace the bridge. So my sense is let's have some stability amidst the raft of changes, and I think the context for now is for stability and managing through change well. We also need to recognise that local government is about more than structure and scale, and it's actually ultimately about people as well as identity and protecting identity, representation, governance, relationships and trust. And any future model must preserve a meaningful local voice, your voice, reflect the interests of both urban and rural communities, and be developed in partnership with iwi and hapu as well. The government's timeframe is challenging, and that's why we're taking this pragmatic approach, particularly for councils and communities that have not previously undertaken detailed amalgamation work. And we've thought about it and talked about it on the surface, but certainly haven't gone deep into it. And we should not rush into a preferred structure simply to meet a deadline. The consequences of these decisions could last for generations. So I talked about unintended consequences before, and that's very real. At the same time, not being ready to submit a Head Start proposal does not mean doing nothing, and that's not. And we certainly intend to continue to explore that. We should continue to work with our neighbouring councils, iwi, hapu, stakeholders, and you and our community to explore opportunities for greater collaboration, shared services, stronger regional influence, other ways of delivering services, managing infrastructure, protecting our assets, And at last week's mayoral forum, which is a whole bunch of mayors in the Horizons district, about 7 of us, I suggested that to the mayors across the region that we write a letter to the government, to the ministers, particularly Minister Watts and Minister Bishop, to indicate that we're not ready to participate in Head Start, but we're actively pursuing the opportunity for change to how we deliver for our communities in the future. And just to wrap up, ultimately our job as elected members is to give our current communities and our future generations the best life that we can when it boils down to everything. Finding the balance between delivering services and investing in growth, maintaining assets and infrastructure, and at the same time keeping costs and rates low is definitely a challenge and a fine balance. In fact, it's impossible to achieve that balance. We want people to feel proud, though, to live here in Wanganui and at the same time feel prosperous and safe. And how we do that is, as I said, it's really hard. And I just want to say tonight's feedback will form an important part of the continuing conversation. As we talked about, one of the questions that Councillor Julie answered was around consulting with our community. We will certainly do that, and we're trying to get out and about, but this is the biggest change, as I said, I think, in local government since 1989. We need to hear from people, and we should be having views from right around as to what that looks like. But as I said, no decisions have been made. Your views will help guide that position for council, and how this wider program of local government reform develops. We need to think about the bigger picture. So ngā mihi nui, and thank you again for your time, for the team that's helped inform you tonight, and your questions and your contribution. And there's obviously a whole lot more to come. I'll close off with a karakia. E te atua, tēnā koe mō ngā whakaro, kua whakaturia, tēnā koe mō ngā kōrero, kua whakapuakina, awi ngā tia mātou ki te whakamahi, i enei mātauranga, ki te whakatau i ngā whakataunga pai mō Whanganui, arahina mātou kia anga whakamua i runga i te whakaro nui, te whakaute me te kotahitanga. Haumi e hui e taiki e. Amene. Right.
Thank you very much, everyone, for watching and participating tonight. May you all have a very pleasant evening. Good night.